Now we're live. All right, so this is the Synth Summit Show, episode 15, and we are here with Erogenous Tones, Rick Burnett, and Rick is he's a. How would you best describe yourself? Because you're not just a module builder. Like, I mean, you're a coder and designer, I guess you would say, and
Yeah, I pretty much. I'm one of those, jack of all trades type of people. Just I love getting into all kinds of different things. So that's why you see me.
you would say. Hold on. See, I told you I had to mute it.
Yeah, I hear her doing it now.
Yeah.
Kind of just like I have interests all over the place.
So the things that I wanted to talk about first is we're gonna kind of go back a little bit before we move forward. So the first module that you guys came out with, was that the Mother's Little Helper, or what was the first module?
So the first module I think that actually came out for sale was Levitate, which is the utility module. But the first module I started designing was GateStorm.
All right, let me pull that. I'm gonna pull this up. This is actually I think the site that you have here. I'm on your website, which is erogenous-tones.com. So you can kind of go there and check it out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share it if Google hasn't removed that app yet, which they have not been making things easy over here. But let me pull this up for the people to see. The GateStorm. This is a pretty ambitious module. How long did this take you to code and kind of get from initial concept out to production?
I'll say about 2 years. So it started out. The original design looked nothing like this. Of course, it was my first board design, and like half the components, I not enough spacing, noise issues, all kinds of things. But I was like, I wasn't even sure I was going to even, I didn't even have plans to be Erogenous Tones at that point. But once I started working with it and having fun with it, I was like, this could be a really fun module to put out there. So I started developing a little further and ended up meeting Andrew Morelli from SSF at a synthesizer event in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And we struck up a conversation and ended up spending a lot of time talking about modules and I'm an electrical engineer and he's an electrical engineer, and so he really piqued my interest to get in it further. Well, I actually put GateStorm, which didn't have a name at that time, kind of on the back burner as I was starting this other project with me and him working on it, and then all of a sudden I'd like all of a sudden wanted to use GateStorm more than anything else, so I kind of pushed that to the front. And I think the reason it probably took a little bit longer for me was I did a whole bunch of the design, and then, I'm not an analog person, I'm more of a digital person, but I needed to learn analog. So I got in touch with Andrew and we decided to work on it together. So he basically did a lot of help with the analog circuitry and kind of like, taught me a lot about that aspect of it. And then I worked on the digital side, and that's kind of what got GateStorm out there in the first place.
So GateStorm, can you just give us an idea as far as what this thing is doing for you, and what the real bulk of its duty is for? Because I mean, you could do a lot with this module.
Yeah, what I really wanted was I had probably about 6 or 7 other gate generating modules, and I always found that I was actually doing a live show at this event in North Carolina called 919 Noise. And I was struggling that I wanted to change up my gating during the show, but I had to move a lot of patch cables around it. And for that, I was like, well, that works, but I really want something that I could change up my settings a little quicker by a little bit of recall. I'm one of those people, I definitely understand the beauty of atomic functionality that we get inside of Eurorack, because, if you want to add like a new filter, it's great. You can just take out one and put the other one in. But at the same time, there are certain things that you're like, well, I'd really like to have something that has recall sometimes to be able to really, be able to dynamically change things on the fly. So that's how GateStorm got started. And basically, it's a gate generator that has what I call 4 complex lanes and 4 simple lanes, and has a whole bunch of CV capabilities so that you can modify what it's doing. It's got synchronization so it can sync to other clocks. It has patch recall, so you can bring stuff up that you've done before. It's got randomization, that's controlled randomization, so that you can control what kind of things get randomized, what kind of values are acceptable to come out of that. And you know, that's how it got started.
Yeah, because it's pretty awesome to have that big of a screen on there too. Was that did that worry you that you were going to put that? Because really at the time, I can't think of. Can you think of any other modules that really had a screen like that on them? Or
I'd say the ModCan sequencer had the black and white touchscreen. I think is the
yeah,
only other one at the time that was that size. You know, a lot of people get hung up on. I feel like you know what fitting within the boundary in other
mhm.
synthesizer circles. I'd say, you know, making sure that everyone's going to like the format that you use. But the thing about Eurorack to me is there's just no rules. You
Yeah,
know, I
yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
it's all over the place, and some people it aggravates, but for me, that's a freedom,
So
right?
are
I
you
mean,
not a grayscale type person that wants to change every panel to look the same? Or
no, my panels are all kinds of different colors I mean that I buy from other people. I just care about functionality. You
sure,
know,
sure.
when someone's listening to some music I've written, they're not, you know, sending me a message on Facebook, hey, can you send me a picture of the synthesizer you use? Because I only like music that has on synthesizers with a red face panel. You know, that stuff is so inconsequential that to me, it's what I can do with it. And so when I started working with GateStorm and the design of the screen, because I knew the first thing people were going to say is, oh my gosh, look at all that information. What does it mean? So I had to balance between make it very informative, but also don't make it so that, you know, you've got to go through 35 different menus to find out some, you know, value you have set.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
I'm a visual person.
The
So
biggest thing that I noticed just walking up to GateStorm is it's a little bit overwhelming when you first look at it because there's so much information on that screen. It's not like you have the screen and then, you know, it's a lot of wasted space. It's actually pretty, you know, pretty tightly packed in there. But um, the cool thing about it is that you're not guessing. It's not like a disting or something where you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what am I actually doing right now because I'm trying to use some archaic binary code or something. With
right.
yours, it's actually laid out graphically pretty well. Uh, did that, you know, did it originate in that kind of layout, or did you have to change the user interface on the graphical user interface on it a lot during development?
No, actually, I will say the very first iteration that was I talked about that was like, you know, didn't really work right. It had a little tiny OLED screen on it. I used it. I didn't even write the full firmware, but I did a little bit of work on it, and I was like, this isn't going to work. So from that, I switched immediately to a bigger screen. The this isn't the actual final screen. It was a 1.8-inch display was on there before this one, and I felt like it was a little too hard to read. I mean, it's the same resolution but smaller pixels. So I actually sourced this panel, which was larger, so that you could see more of that information. Some people say that it kind of has that like DOS tracker look to it, if people
Yeah.
recall.
Mhm.
And I was like, how do I get some of that kind of feeling of all that information going on, but not so cryptic that you can't see what, you know, it's telling you? Because
So
oh, go ahead.
is there a the layout on there, is there like a really easy way to jump between different like presets on it?
Yeah, so on that global button down there, you see the second thing it says preset under it. You hit that button twice and it brings up the presets on the bottom, and then you can switch between all 8 presets of the bank that you're in just by
Oh,
pressing
nice.
the number.
And how many banks were there?
I think there's 16 banks total.
Nice, nice.
And it actually uses the same backplane communication as the macro machines and the new Maleko modules that Ben Davis has done, and probably the disting as well. The Mark IV sounds like it uses that as well. So you can actually change presets from those other modules because you can set it up to listen as well.
Oh, you're talking about on the bus cable itself.
Yeah, all of us have implemented this patch change through the backplane, the bus cable.
Very cool. Yeah, that's going to be something that'll be interesting to see in the long run. How well that all plays out and how many people are using it in like live sets and whatnot. Because that's where I see using that more than anything else would probably be a live scenario. Do you do you do any kind of live performances with your gear, or are you mainly staying in your studio with it, or?
I have done live performances, but I haven't done one since I've put out Gatestorm. So I'm actually in the process of building up another box of stuff to do. It's not so much for live stuff yet, but we're kind of doing some music for visuals type stuff. So I actively, what I tend to do when I make a module is I'll build the prototype up, and then I'll put it in the box and start working with it in my flow to see, what works, what doesn't work. And then I go back and refine the design until I get what I want.
Now you can change like the math that's happening inside each lane. Is that correct?
You mean in terms of like with each lane, there's a bunch of things you can set. You can set the direction, forward, backwards, palindrome. You can change the time base. You can change the length and the start location. You can change the there's randomization features, so you can have it either like randomized steps with just full random, or you can use Euclidean math on generating those. And then you can take all the lanes, and the simple lanes at the bottom, you can pull in the simple lane, which is just a clock, or you can take in any lanes and use any kind of logic function on them. So
yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is you can switch the different logic functions like per lane and that kind of stuff.
And you can CV control that as well, synchronized to the clock.
Synchronized switching like from like and to exclusive or and that kind of stuff?
That's correct. So there's a CV you can set up, and then the reason for that is I wanted things to be able to change on the master beat, so that you didn't get glitching and stuff like that to happen. I mean, you can turn the synchronization off, but basically you can switch. What's nice about that is, like, if you have a kick going on one line and you got a different pattern on the second line that you're randomly generating, you could actually use logic to say, if I've got a kick going on, don't output something on this lane, right? Yeah. So really easy thing to do there. So, basically with that, you do an and you invert the kick drum line going in, and then whatever the other line, you go into the other input of the and so you'll randomly generate a tone, but it will never happen when the kick is going.
Oh, cool. So you can keep your patterns from getting too cluttered and
right,
a little too random.
Yeah, definitely. That's why that's there. And also, you can set the pulse width for the lane as well, and you can CV control that as well. You can also put them into one-shot mode, and the reason for that is I was thinking almost like if you've ever used like a trance gate before. So if you're coming out of your synth and you take the gate signal that you're generating, just feed that into one of the lanes of Gatestorm, and then take that output, and then you can generate a gate pattern off of that and get kind of like a trance gate effect to drive an envelope.
Very cool. Yeah. Because I've been using I've got the Trigger Riot over here, and I've been using that to kind of do some of the things that I can see this doing, but this, it looks like you can kind of set things up in a way that you can change them on the fly pretty quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So the next modules that you're working on, is that the Levitate? So
the next one that came out before Gatestorm, but it actually got designed after I'd already started Gatestorm, so I was really waiting for stuff to get done on that one. I think I was like waiting for a new revision of the board come in. I was like, oh, let me work on Levitate. So Levitate started, I actually bought a hint and switch mix. I don't know if you've seen that module before, but it's basically a unity gain 8x8 mixer, where it's basically 64 buttons, and whatever button on links an input to an output. And I'm going to name drop my friend Neil Parfit, who probably pronouncing his name wrong, but he's always showing me new modules, and I'm always buying them because we seem to have a lot of similar taste. So one thing I said is I didn't like that I couldn't adjust my inputs coming in, and I couldn't adjust the inputs or the outputs coming out. There was no level control built in. So I decided to, and Hinton does make a module that can do that, but it was much wider than I wanted. It just took up a lot of space. So in talking with Neil, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to build this. He's like, hey, I think I'd like to use that. So I built Design Levitate, which was different than what you see now. It was just straight through attenuators for 8 channels. And then I showed it. I was going to do a Kickstarter on it, but Kickstarter doesn't really work that well. And then I started talking to Chris Meyer, who said, "Hey, it'd be nice if it had these two features, which were invert and or maybe that was maybe it was one feature he asked, and I have been working on the mix capability as well because I wanted to use it as a mixer. So then maybe it was the LED indicators that Chris said mentioned he likes those as well. So I added all that in and ended up being something that a lot of people wanted to use. So I decided to fully productize it at that point.
Yeah, it's looking really pretty cool now. So you can do attenuation on it, and then you can do up to 2 times gain per channel, right?
Yep.
And
yeah, each channel, and I did that because there's a lot of modules that I've bought that some people don't make their output gain as high as other modules. So I'm constantly fighting on certain modules to keep a level that I want going into things. I mean, I know, Eurorack is like the Wild West, so everybody has their own opinion about what your levels should be. And then I wanted to use it as just a really tight mixer, and because I'm combining stuff all over my rack case all the time, and having a bunch of mixers that are that high density, you never. I think I could probably put 4 in my case and probably fill them up every time, just with like mixing envelopes together and stuff like that. Because it's either it's 2 4-to-1s or 1 8-to-1 as well that you can use it with. So like one thing I did, I was just curious, so I took 4 of them and hooked them into a module called Mix, which is a really high quality 4-channel mixer that Pro Modular put out. And so with that, I'm getting 32 channels of input basically in 4 submixes, that I can control with mute and solo. I was just playing around to see how it worked, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, and it looks like it's laid out really nice too. Like I did get a chance to kind of feel the build quality of this stuff, and it felt pretty darn nice. I'm trying to see if I can share this so that people can see what the website looks like on it. But and see if it'll. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, like the layout of these things are all really clean and easy to use, and it's not too super cramped either. Like you can actually get your fingers in there and move things around, so which is nice. Now, do these do offsets at all, or is it just attenuation? Or
so if there's nothing plugged into a channel, it will go from 0 to 10 volts.
Okay, so you can do
offsets, and basically if you end up wanting to set up an offset, you're going to use like the top 4 to be able to do that.
Okay, let me pull this up because I don't think I actually properly shared it. There we go. So yeah, this is the module here.
Yeah.
And now you've got another module coming as well. So if you go to their site, you can kind of come over here to modules, and you'll see we've got the VC8.
So this has started shipping already. I believe the 3 places that I have it at right now are Schneidersleben for people in Germany, and Control in New York, and then I'm getting ready to send some to Analog Haven, and I think Perfect Circuit Audio has a few as well.
Now this looks like a monster as far as VCAs. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the features and layout of this thing? So,
yeah, I also wanted to say, I mean, you'll notice that a lot of my modules have 8 on them. And the reason being is when I started working on GateStorm, I was like, okay, now I've got 8 different gate sources. What am I going to do with all these things? So I really wanted to have a wide range of things to be able to really explore stacking stuff together, which is a lot of fun. I have this friend that I do music with a lot, and he's one of those people that uses Max for Live or Reactor, and he'll be like, yeah, I just hooked up 105 delay chains together to see what it would do, and he gets all these amazing sounds out of it. So I was like, I want to have a lot of VCAs that work the same, a lot of envelopes that work the same, a lot of gates to start looking at some of these more complex connections together. And I think a lot of that came too because I had a DX7 FM synthesizer, and then actually it was a TX802, but it's the rack mount version. And then I got FM8, and I was playing around with all these topologies with modulating oscillators digitally, and so this is where a lot of this comes from, where I wanted to have all that kind of capability of creating these crazy routings, but in the Eurorack world. So VC8 I was like, okay, well, I want a whole bunch of analog VCAs to be able to stack them together. So, for instance, one thing you can do is these work at audio rate. So if you use your carrier and your modulator are both audio signals, well, then I also wanted a VCA to be able to control the modulator. And then, I start stacking, and you run out of VCAs really quick when you're doing stuff like that. And
yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking, is this is one of those modules that kind of solves that you can never have enough VCAs and you can do submixes on this as well.
That's correct. So if you put it in submix mode, what ends up happening is the top 3 of each set of 4 will be fed through the 4th VCA. So basically you can mix 3 things together, and then you can control those 3 things with the controls for the 4th VCA.
That's awesome.
So again, like I said, this is one of those things where I just wanted a whole bunch of VCAs to play with. Because honestly, I don't see a huge number of people doing that kind of change VCA thing. Because I look at a lot of patches. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people that do, but when you see a case that only has like 2 VCAs or 3 VCAs in it, that they're a lot of times those are just getting used to maybe drive the filter response or drive the amplitude envelope, and because they don't have enough others to do anything else.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of the times what I'll usually do is I'll have like a lot of like mixers per row and VCAs per row, and then I'll try to kind of use those in combination of each other to do things where it's like, dude, you've got so many right there. You can kind of get a little bit more free with your routing and free with your control of your timbre and whatnot, because the timbre can change when you start doing things like increasing and decreasing, a steady CV going into something,
Right.
So that's super powerful.
The other thing, the offset knob on these is different than the bias knob that you'll see on a lot of other VCAs. I've noticed a lot of VCAs will use bias, which basically it goes from 0 to a positive voltage. So the CV offset basically allows you to apply a negative voltage to the CV level. And what that does is it kind of shifts your starting point forward. So let's say you had a sine wave coming in. Well, it's going to push some of that negative, so it offsets when that sine would actually start to turn it on, and it will bring down the level, of course. But when I was playing with this with the prototype, I was like, wow, this really gives you some even additional fun for figuring out how to, change the response of something.
Yeah, this is definitely a cool module. And it's only what, like 18 HP?
Yeah, it's 18 HP.
Yeah, so that's really not that large for that many, for considering you're getting that many VCAs in there. I mean, that's pretty powerful.
I spend a lot of time, and all these boards are single board depth.
So it's all skiff friendly.
Mother's Little Helper has 2 boards, but they're not like separated very far. It's a very tiny board for the MIDI connector. But the goal was to make these things all skiff friendly, and to try to make them cheaper for people. You put 2 boards, then you just added twice the number of boards. The assembly time goes up. All kinds of pricing goes up on that.
Now tell me a little bit about Mother's Little Helper and what that project was all about.
So when I got a Mother 32, what I wanted to be able to do was to sequence the sequencer. So you can't send any kind of voltage into it to change what the current sequence is playing. So all of a sudden I got the idea, let me just make a helper module to do that. So the main function of Mother's Little Helper is to do that. The second thing you can do is that you can change the assign setting that is happening out of the assign jack of the Mother 32. And anyone that owns a Mother 32 knows that you've got to do this like crazy hand configuration to actually change the assign. Well, this, you can use a voltage and a gate to actually change what's coming out of the assign. Now, there's some settings that won't make sense, but a lot of them are like different kind of modulators you can generate from the internal clock. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm sure there's some more things that people want. So the bottom right of it, you see that there's a sample and hold circuit, which Mother 32 doesn't have. And that's a analog sample and hold circuit. And then the last thing is that sustain button that you see kind of in the middle. There's a
Yeah.
sustain setting that you can set on the sequencer. This is when the sequencer is running. So basically change between AD and AR kind of mode, I think, on their internal sequencer. And you can, that's level triggerable. So, it toggles back and forth between on and off. Just something fun to add with a little bit of the extra space that was there.
Very cool.
Basically, it connects up with MIDI out from Mother's Little Helper directly into the MIDI import on the Mother 32.
That's pretty sweet. Now, this one's available now?
Yeah, the only one that's not available at the moment is Radar.
Well, let's move to that, and then we'll get the dish info on this massive beast of a module. Let me let me screen share this thing and let everybody's kind of mouth.
You might have to zoom out a little bit on that module. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, this thing is ridiculous. What were you thinking? All right, here we go. So this guy is massive.
All right, so this is Radar. This is what I've been working on kind of nonstop lately, and it is actually all the files have been delivered to the manufacturer. I'm just waiting for them to get back from NAMM to begin the build process. And so I'm thinking, just as a heads up, that middle of March is probably when this is going to drop. So basically, I wanted a whole bunch of envelopes, and I wanted them to be easy to use, and I wanted it to be something that would work really well with VC8 and GateStorm. So that's how Radar got built. It's digital behind the scenes. It runs at a sample rate of 44.1K, which is, for CV voltages is definitely overkill. It's 12-bit. And each of the lanes, so in mode 1, which is what the top switch on the system mode is, all 8 lanes work independently, and they're either AD or AR. And there's a gate signal, the second jack in, that you can use. The level will indicate whether it's an AD or AR mode, so you can switch those on the fly. So you can kind of get different length envelopes using a gate. When it's in the R mode, which is to the left, which is how the name Radar came about, that's repeating mode, and so it'll just loop. All of the inputs on the triggers are tied together, so you have to put in a jack if you want to disconnect them. So that way you can trigger a whole bunch of envelopes off of one trigger. The second jack there is the CV for the shape, and the shape goes from logarithmic through linear to exponential, and you CV control that shape. Next to that, you'll see that there's an E and an O switch, and that means equal or opposite, and that controls what the decay or release side of the envelope looks like. And that's set in sets of two envelopes. To the left of that is an ana and digital switch, and that is basically the modeling. So what I did on this is I took a look at all the envelopes I had, and I was like, what do I like about these? So in analog mode, the math works just like how a real analog envelope is going to work. It doesn't look in kind of a wavetable. It actually simulates what a capacitor would be doing, charging and discharging. So when you send a reset signal to trigger, if it's in rise mode, it's not going to do anything, which is how all of the analog envelopes work. Only during decay will it switch back to rise mode. So you don't get any kind of discontinuities in the output waveform, which most people will recognize as like clicking is what they'll typically hear on that. So because of that, the way the math works, as you change the shape, the frequency does not stay constant. Now, if you switch to digital mode, then that works more like a wavetable. And when you send a reset signal, it resets back to attack at 0 every time.
That's awesome that you have both modes on there.
Yeah, I use both. So I was like, I need to have both. And the frequency stays constant as you rotate through the different shapes.
Oh, cool.
So, one of the things I was trying to be space conscious. So this is 28 HP. So, that's why I decided that CVing the shape was something I had not seen on a lot of modules.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that in experimenting with the prototype was absolutely fun to do. So I decided that that's what I wanted to focus as the main CV for this. And then, of course, attack and release decay are set with the other two knobs there. And I don't remember the full time, but I think the highest frequency that you can achieve is basically 2 kilohertz, which is really fast for an envelope rise and fall. And the slowest time, I thought it was like 10 minutes, but I'm going to measure those again because I did some changing on things on that.
So you're saying you could have a 10-minute envelope off of that thing?
I believe so, yeah.
Somewhere in that range, at least, roughly?
I think so. I don't want.
Pretty darn long.
I thought it was 10 minutes. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm thinking it was 5 minutes, but I'm pretty sure it was 10.
Did you list it on the site?
No, I haven't put it on there yet because I had been changing the math a little bit, and so I wanted to go back and check it to make sure I gave people the actual answer.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's mode 1.
But the bottom line is that you can do really long evolving envelopes,
Right.
because that's something that a lot of digital envelopes that I've messed with recently seem to have not quite as long of release trails. Like you could, like, you know, they sound nice, but like not all of them go that crazy long. They're usually just a few seconds, as opposed to, you know, in the minutes.
Oh, it's definitely in the minute category at least.
That's
I can
cool.
tell you that. There's also
too.
There's these 2 output switches on lane 4 and lane 8, and what those will do is if you turn that on the one that's on lane 4, that will do what I call it's like a blend or an OR of the values on 3 or 4. So whatever the max value is between those, that's what's always getting outputted on 4. So it's like a sum, if you will, but I didn't want it to actually you know, fully sum, because then what ends up happening is you basically almost produce a max waveform all the time. But same thing with on output 8, it does that with 6, 7, and 8. So you can generate like a complex waveform out of whatever 6, 7, and 8 are doing. So whatever their max value is, that's what will come out of 8 or 4 in those modes. Now, now that's all just mode 1. So if you switch the switch for the system mode to quad mode, now you have either 2 quadrature envelope LFOs or 1 set of 4 ADARs and 1 quad, and the out 3/4 switch will select between if the top 4 are ADAR mode or if they're in quad mode. So basically all the outputs are going to be 90 degrees out of phase with each other. When you're in that mode, then you have the other controls for shape. Those CVs can do something else, and if you look on there, you'll see speed, gravity, and S delta, and for each of the quad sets. And what that does, if you have the radar switch into the on position, so you can also CV this to be on or off, or sorry, gate control it to be on or off as well. Speed will allow you to change the speed of the LFO, positive or negative. The gravity will allow you to, so you've got 4 signals being generated, you can force those signals to be gravitationally pulled towards 0 degrees or 360. So it kind of gives you these other shapes of distribution of the waves. And then shape delta means that whatever your shape is on the first LFO channel of those 4, then it will basically interpolate the shape to the last one. So you can get these different relationships going on, and you can CV control that as well.
That's awesome.
The last thing is if you put the switch in octature mode, then all of the outputs, it's one big set of LFO with each of them are 45 degrees out, and the first 4 CVs will control that as well. The same things that quadrature would do. And then as a side, there is a expander module coming forward as well, because I didn't think everyone would want these features. And after talking to some other people, they'd really like to get this capability. So I've designed that in as well, is that there'll be some wave sequencing stuff in there. So because there's no end of decay and end of rise in it, but I have that information internally, the module will allow you to set up triggering of other lanes based off of, let's say lane 1 end of rise happens, you could trigger, envelope 3 and 4 to start, that kind of stuff. And you'll be able to control whether the triggers are ignored or not. And the other thing I've added, which on the expander is going to be fun, is that you can set the delay of when a trigger will happen. Sorry, when an envelope will start from when the trigger starts. So you can actually shift them out in time as well.
That's awesome, because then it's kind of like it's kind of similar in the way that you can get the triggers off of like a maths,
right.
Which is I use that kind of stuff all the time. But with this thing, I mean, you've got so many more envelopes on there. I mean, it's
Yeah, and I've tested all the expander stuff, so I just have to build the module to actually, control it, which is in works right now. But it just adds even more functionality for having those things, because I know that's important to some people, but I know HP is also important to some people.
yeah.
So I'm trying to it's always a struggle and a balance to give
Do you
you.
know what the size of your expander is, like roundabout what you're shooting for?
I'm shooting for 4 HP.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
nice.
So the reason I was going to do 2 HP, but I want an encoder on there for setting the delay time much easier.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of LEDs on it showing you the state of where everything's at. And I'm also putting a recall system for for those settings, save and recall, so that you'll be able to drive that as well.
Very cool. Yeah, yeah. Because that's, I mean, oh man, I'm like sitting here, like as you're talking, I keep kind of like looking back and forth, and I'm like, all right, so what's moving where? What's moving where? Because I'm gonna have to make some room. Because now this module is fairly large. It's 28 HP, so
That's
it's not.
correct.
It's not. That's nothing to sneeze at. But at the same time, again, it doesn't look cramped, but it has like a lot of control on it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's, I spent the knobs I use are aluminum, with some really nice knurling and plastic inserts on the inside for connecting to the knobs. And for the shafts, I spent a long time picking out the knobs on these, because I knew I was going to do some high density designs, and the last thing that people want is a knob they can't use.
Hold up your hands. Hold them up. Okay. Because I always like to examine what the module builder's hands look like. Because
I don't have sausage fingers.
Well, some guys they'll hold up their hands, and like I'm wondering if they have toothpicks, because some of the modules are so crammed together. I'm like, what's going on there? And I have thin hands. Like look at that. Look at that. These are perfect synthing hands. Yeah.
I got piano hands.
You can't buy these.
We're in the same group.
So
well, I had originally, it's like Levitate is where this high density knob started, and I had originally done it with the plastic shafts.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, they're just too hard to get fine detail out of them.
Mm-hmm.
You're like tensing your hand to try to turn a tiny bit, and you're like, yeah, I just really can't dial in. So I actually contacted some companies and said, okay, send me every knob that is like, between 6 millimeters and 15 millimeters or whatever. And I went through all these knobs until I found this particular one. And I'm like, oh, this one works perfect. My favorite one is I got this one knob that the knurling went in the opposite direction. So it was like rings around it. So I'm like, okay, so your hand isn't going to slide off the knob, but you can't turn it. So
really... No, I've actually felt those before, and it's really weird. Somebody did something similar. I was working on a prototype of I think it was Native Instruments Complete Audio 6, and it had something very similar to it. And I was like, yeah, this is really weird. It's like my hand doesn't fall off it, but it won't turn it.
Oh, you know what? The iRig from has a gain knob on it that is so smooth that I can't even turn it. I can't even tell if I'm moving it. So that I definitely spent a lot of time just trying to make sure that, like, when people are using this, that they're going to get the response they want out of it while they're using, especially if it's live. Mm-hmm. You want something that you can touch and feel. And I definitely get that small knobs are going to be a struggle for certain things, right? Like if you're doing fine tuning frequency, you want a big knob, because then the ratio of movement makes a lot of sense. So these knobs were specifically picked that when I go in there, I'm using them myself and making sure that if I need to tweak it just a tiny little bit to, maybe get the frequency, if I'm like modulating something where the frequency matters, that I can actually hit that frequency without a lot of effort. And they work well for that.
So yeah, I was at KnobCon, and you had a few modules there, and everything built really nice. But I wanted to also ask about something that I don't see on the site that I saw there, and that was the screens.
Yes, the visual stuff that we got going on. So that stuff is still in progress. So as a quick explanation of what we're doing, we play around with Raspberry Pis a lot. So I'm going to name drop this other guy I work with, James Clark, who's a VJ, goes by VJ2C. He does a lot of programming with this software package called Modulate for doing visual stuff, and I use VDMX. If anyone was at NobCom, we were doing the visuals on the opening night, and we were like, we'd really like to push this into both the Eurorack and standalone with the Raspberry Pi to just have these kind of image generators that can do 3D and listen to sound and have CV inputs and outputs, but really focus on the digital world of it. Because let's be honest, the analog world, all the LZX industry stuff is fantastic. I mean, that stuff just nails it. Large stuff is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I've gotten a chance to play with it, and you know, I'm amazed at how well that stuff works. But I feel like the digital representation in the visual world is just kind of lacking. So, you know, we're like, what can we do for that? So this is going to be kind of an open source project. We're going to build a module and display that can be used standalone or inside your Eurorack case to interface into a Raspberry Pi for visual purposes, and then we're going to give all the software that we're using out to whoever wants to use it. So it'll be showing up at GitHub, because we're using other people's software too. We didn't write everything. I mean, we've written a lot of code, but it's all OpenGL based, basically doing GLSL shaders and basically the stuff that you saw us running at NobCon with all those visual generation. We just want to give that to everyone else. And to be honest, there's a selfish motive here, because I go to enough shows that the visuals look like someone did screen caps out of MS Paint and then, you know, did a slideshow. And I'm like, I want to see more interesting stuff. You know, I like to see just really stuff that's kind of working with the music and kind of, you know, I don't know, visually giving you something to enjoy along with the audio portion of it.
Yeah, you guys had a really cool setup there, and I was looking at it and just kind of seeing what you guys were doing. And I kept thinking to myself, I was like, man, not just video synthesis stuff, but for like feedback for if you're doing a live show and maybe you've got a projector going and that sort of thing. Like it'd be really great to just be able to get feedback in that way as well, and have it all in the case. Is that something that you are actively pursuing as something that's going to be in a modular case, or you want it to be more standalone, or what?
We're doing both. I mean, we're gonna probably have another power jack that you're gonna have to use, because it's just gonna be too much power for anyone's case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, knowing the backplane requirements, I think the screen that we're using needs like an amp itself, just to give you an idea.
Okay.
And that, you know, so you're gonna be able to have, you know, you don't want to have just our module and then, you know, like a mixer. Okay,
yeah,
I got no more current. So we're just going to have like a wall wart jack that you can hook up to it to give it the rest of the power and to drive the Pi and to drive all the other video switching circuitry that we're adding into it, because we're going to make this thing so that if you don't want to use the Raspberry Pi, or you're working on something else, like you want to feed in some other signals, that you can actually use the display for other things. So, you know, and feed through it at the same time. I mean, this is designed to be kind of like not only a generator, but a visual utility module as well for people.
I wanted to kind of pull this. I have an image here that I wanted to pull up, and apparently I Googled it, and apparently it is from one of my own videos. So I guess I could use it. There we go.
You better get permission of the videographer.
Yeah, that guy's a dick. All right, so I just wanted to show this real quick. This, if it'll show it. Okay, so that's actually like the physical radar prototype that you had at NobCon, as well as a Gatestorm and a VC8 there. I was looking to see if I could find pictures of those screens. I wanted to show people that stuff.
And you'll notice that radar has a different interface. I went back and added a whole bunch more switches into it.
So where are you going to be manufacturing this stuff?
So everything right now that I'm working on, I work with two different manufacturers, one in Florida and the other one is in Denver. I'm sure everyone knows who WMD is.
Mm-hmm.
So I manufacture through them because I'm really happy with their quality of work. So they did VC8 and for me, and a rerun of Levitate, because we needed to do another one. And so I hand test all these things before they go out. So I have them build them. They ship them to me. I run them through all calibrations and testing, and I got to say their quality is top notch. And I'm an engineer, so I'm going to be picky about things, but I got to say they really nail the stuff they do.
That's awesome. Yeah, because like I said, just the early stuff that I was playing with, I was really impressed with the actual feel of it. Certain, like, I'm not gonna put module makers on blast, but certain larger names, some of the modules don't feel great to me. Like some of the really great selling stuff, like I don't like, if the pots are wobbly, or even little things like there's not enough resistance to the pot, that kind of
Right.
stuff. um it's such a little thing, but it can be really irritating, especially if you're dealing with, like what you said, if you have an envelope with a really wide range that you can get on it, you need to be very precise on that stuff when you're
Right.
setting it up. So if the pots don't feel right, that can be a serious issue.
Yeah, you see behind me this wall of modules.
It's okay.
I buy a lot of modules because I use them and I test them with my modules because I know that that's how other people are going to use them. I mean, I generally, if I find something that does exactly what I want, I'm like, I don't need to build that. I already have this one. I'm just going to use this one that someone else made. But I also look at, learn from other people's engineering as well to see, oh, that's not a good idea. Oh, that's a good idea. Because it's fascinating. Engineering is an art form. And so, and I listen to a lot of people, what they like and don't like. And, certain things are limitations. Like levitate, the shafts are plastic on the potentiometers, so they're not bolted to the panel on just that module. But the reason being is I had to do that to be able to fit the LEDs in. Mm-hmm. So I had to make a choice there on the design. And I was like, well, I don't want to make it any wider, and I really want to have these LEDs. So I'm going to go with the highest quality plastic shaft potentiometers that I can find. So, they have a tiny bit of wobble to them, but I was like, I got to make that decision for this, for what I think is going to be the greater good on this one. And I haven't been disappointed with that.
Absolutely. So, getting off of the shameless plug stuff, I'm going to ask you about some of your personal favorite modules. Do you have any go-tos in your rack right now that you tend to find yourself using on every patch and really enjoying?
You talking about from other manufacturers?
Yeah, like let's start off with sound sources. Is there any sound sources that you find yourself really enjoying and excited about, or?
I'd say my two favorite are going to be the Cycle Box, the original one,
Mm-hmm.
or sorry, the second one. And probably lately I've been using the E350 a lot from, I think that's the Morphin Terrarium from.
That guy barely knows what he's doing.
Yeah, right. No, I really enjoy it. I just like a lot of the variety I can get out of it. So those two have been my go-to. I think I'm going to start playing with the Orgon accumulator more. I have one, and you'll notice I'm picking things that have a lot of CV capability to them.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have both the way I have my modular laid out is I have a row of digital oscillators, and then above that is a row of analog oscillators. And I do that just because I'm silly. But the Orgone, Quadnic, and then Morphing Terrarium are right there. And yeah, I would honestly have to say that the Orgone accumulator is probably my favorite oscillator, just because
it's so much fun.
You can do so many ridiculous things with it. And then on top of that, when you start playing with the built-in effects of it, and you start, like, I love the delay in it. You can just make it just go bananas. That and the bit crushing and whatnot on it, the sample rate reduction and that kind of stuff is just really fun. The morphing, I like to I use that for like subtle tones. Like, to me, that thing is like all about subtlety when you're using it. And
yeah, it's so much fun. And so I'm getting ready to. I'm probably going to start using 2 analog VCOs as well. I mean, I have a bunch of analog ones as well, but the Roland ones that Maleko did.
Oh yeah, I'm dying to get a hold of that stuff.
So I'm going to buy the VCO shortly because I like it. Kind of reminds me of kind of the oscillator section out of a ARP Odyssey,
mm-hmm.
and one of my friends, I helped him kind of rebuild an ARP Odyssey that he saved, and I like those type of limitations. There's no sign. It's basically just
Yeah.
like a square and a ramp type thing. And so I think I'm gonna start trying using that along, because I really want to add. I like having both analog and digital together, so I can use the benefits out of both of them.
I may have to pick your brain about that Odyssey a little bit, because I'm getting ready to the project that I'm working on right now is I got a hold of Donald Byrd's instrument collection. So if you guys are familiar with Donald Byrd, he's famous jazz musician, and so I have access to like all his synthesizers and everything, and we opened them up the other day, and perfect ARP Odyssey, like all in the case with a custom trumpet controller just for him.
Oh
Like just
wow!
oh man, when you see this collection, it'll just shatter your world. You just sit there and just drooling.
Well, it was
Yeah,
a fun project for us to do to get it working, and we had a guy at Moog, one of the service guys there, replaced all the caps for us, and then built some wood cheeks for it. And then we're still working with it. I finally found out that one of the resistors had broke in the center, but you couldn't tell. So it would heat up and disconnect, heat up and disconnect. That
oh,
was
I
the
got
last
you.
big
Yes, it
thing
was
we.
the intermittent issue.
Oh gosh! So once we got that fixed, but I made myself. We get together like once a week to work on music and visuals. And one night I was like, you know what? I'm only going to use the ARP Odyssey. That's it. Nothing else. I'm going to make myself make every tone that I want to use. And I was just, sometimes I'm sure everyone gets this. You got so many different selections that you're paralyzed. It was analysis paralysis type thing.
Yeah.
I know, how do I make a new sound? But I sat there and made myself just worked with the controls just on the ARP Odyssey, and I was blown away with the number of different things that I could get out of it. I was like, wow, that is just phenomenal.
I'm getting a question. I'm reading the live chat here, which, by the way, people, if you're watching, definitely join the live chat, because we get some interesting conversations in there as well. But yeah, the one that I'm actually really interested about that as well is the dual VCF from Moleko, the Roland dual VCF. I want to check that out as well. That whole range looks really cool to me. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I want to go with the envelope off of it, or if I want to go with the IntelliGel version, because they should both be fairly similar. But I want to kind of compare them. But at the same
My
time,
biggest thing.
then I'm looking at the radar, and I'm like, well, that would kind of make a whole lot more sense.
Yeah,
It's a little bit different use case though.
it is, and that for me with radar, I have other envelopes too, right? It's not an ADSR. If I need an ADSR, I'll probably use my IntelliGel one. But I was like, I want a whole bunch of AD/AR envelopes, because having a bunch of those, you get these little modulators you can use all over the place, and now you have 8 of them.
And there's another thing that I kind of am looking at it, both this and the VC8. Like I'm looking at where they fit into my workflow, because I always need more, just like you were saying. I always need more of this stuff. But with certain products that have been coming out lately, like the Drum Brute, throwing all that stuff into my Eurorack, now it's like, well, I can send all these channels out, and I can send them into VC8, and I can, or into the mixer, and then I can use the envelopes on all these different channels, and it's all right there. You know what I mean? It's not hunting and pecking all through my system. All right, now I gotta cluster these 2 VCAs, and I gotta cluster these 2 VCAs, and
Right.
you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and I'm an in the box and out of the box person. I have no rules when I work on music, so I just picked up an Expert Sleepers ES8, which is their USB interface.
Oh
So,
man, I wasn't even sure if that was actually like out and about yet, or what.
yeah, they just started shipping again, and it's fantastic. So I run stuff. A lot of times I'll record through there, but it's not uncommon for me to run a whole track out of, say, live into my modular, just to mess with it in the modular realm, and then bring it back in. And so I'm doing those same kind of things. I might subgroup certain things coming out of the track, or I'll run the whole thing. I think I did a remix for a How to Destroy Angels contest,
Oh, cool.
and it was a lot of fun. I ran the whole mix out so that I could add in some, very organic generated things. I think I was using one of those BBD delays,
Hmm.
the Bucket Brigade diode delays, and just adding in this little bits on top of the song to make it a little bit more aggressive, if you will. So yeah, I'm right there with you. It's like when you have all these extra things and they're grouped up, it's very easy to set them up, and when they work the same. I mean, I like having variety, but sometimes you also want a utility that you can just go to. And if you've used up all the ones on one, and now you got to go use a specialized module that works in a completely different way, then you're like, oh, what do I do here? Your brain has to switch. So I try to make things that it's easy to quickly get in there and do what you need to do.
Yeah, I'm looking at that ES8 right now. Like, man.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I've been
it works solid.
But yeah, that may have to happen.
Now, I will warn you, and no disrespect for the expert sleepers people, but if you use Silent Way, it is the most convoluted software to set up.
Well, I'll be primarily using it with some software that unfortunately has not released to the public. But we have a software modular called System63, and that's been worked on for the last like 5 years now.
Oh, wow.
And it's been worked on since before reactor blocks, and then was kind of retooled to work completely with reactor blocks, and it does. So I'm just hoping that Mike put it out. So
well, I mean, what I plan on doing, and I'll just release these for free as well. I mean, there's like the CV toolkit stuff that's out there that you can use. That's Max for live devices. Well, I write in Max MSP. I've run lots of stuff in that language, so I'm just going to write a couple like MIDI to CV/gate generators, just so people can have just something simple. Like, I love how much the expert sleeper stuff can do. It's very, very cool, all the features they gave you. But sometimes on some of these things, if I just want to generate a sequence inside live and feed it out to through the ES8, I just feel like that there's a lot of setup that has to go there with so many channels.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it just gets a little overwhelming to switch that up quickly. Even though I generally set up live templates to do that kind of stuff, but
yeah, I can definitely see that being useful. Do you have a specific filter that you prefer? What type of filter tones do you tend to prefer? Do you like more clean, or do you like more like the howling resonance? Or
I am a filter junkie. That is my favorite module. That is what is module type. That's what got me into modular synthesis to begin with, because you just start playing with some analog filters and you're like, what is this? I don't hear these sounds in digital.
Absolutely.
And what's his name? Urs Heckman in Diva is probably the best sounding like analog digital synth I've ever heard.
Yeah, that is just and not only that, but because I'll say when people ask me about, because I'm the same way as you, I like to use both analog and digital. And when people ask me, well, what's the most analog sounding plug-in and this and that, I'm like, well, if you really want to get down to it, my personal opinion is Monarch from Native Instruments. The filter on that is insanity, and Diva. And Diva goes a step further because it's not just one filter. It's You've got a whole range of filters, and you can swap them in and out. Oh, I love it.
And he explains how he does the math on it to generate the feedback. It's phenomenal. I mean, I'm
the zero feedback math on it.
It's so impressive what he's done. The Moog filter that UAD released is also pretty good, but I don't use a UAD DSP anymore, so I kind of gave that up.
I think Urs kind of paved the way for a lot of that stuff. I'm not positive, and I'm sure there's some engineers out there who probably hit me up later on and be like, hey, you need to correct your brain. But I think he was the first one to really be doing the zero feedback, or whatever it's called, filters. And then a few other companies started using it. I know Native Instruments uses it now. I'm pretty sure that Arturia uses it. They redid their mini Moog filter just recently, and it sounds really good too. But it's cool because you could build basically a mini Moog in Diva. you can build, you can use one in Monarch, and you can use like the Arturia one. They all sound fantastic, but they all sound like totally different synths.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you
The
put all three of them
nuances.
next to each other and say, you know, which one of these is the mini Moog, you'd be like, well, that sounds like a mini. That sounds. They all sound great, but they all sound totally different. It's the weirdest thing.
So I'll say I'll give you 3 filters that are my favorites right now, just because, you know, and these are really hard to pick for me. My favorite kind of like simple filter where, you know, not a lot of controls and everything, but very dedicated for what it does, is probably the one from Bubble Sound, the SEM. I just really like the sound out of that filter. I think he did a really good job of just how it's laid out and everything. My favorite filter that I actually can't tell you if it's analog or digital, but I think it's analog, is the Three Sisters from was it Mangrove? That thing is an absolute blast because you can do comb filtering with it, and you know, you can easily get stuff that you don't want out of it, because it has so much control, and the self oscillation is crazy. But that one is so much fun. And then the third one right now is probably the Sailing Key filter from Befacto.
Oh yeah.
The sounds you can get out of that thing are just like, I don't know. It's crazy how gritty you can get. So those are probably what I use more than anything else right now. I do have a Morpheus on order.
So I was just about to say that's what's got me like super excited right now, because I'm a filter junkie as well, and that thing, oh man,
I got to touch
I'm so
one.
excited.
I was at when I was in Machines and Music, Roslyn was there, and I spent a long time chatting with them, and yeah, I pre-ordered that thing as soon as I could from Control in New York. I was like, let me get on the beginning of that list because I really want this filter. I love that Z-Plane stuff, so I'm hoping that really, you know, does everything I want from a digital filter.
Exactly. That to me is like, I mean, and he is, I mean, you talk about a genius. I mean, that guy is just amazing. So
He's great to chat with.
yeah, super cool. So I interviewed him. Where was the last place I interviewed him at? I guess it was Nam. But we talked for a while about Morpheus, because, and at that point it was still early prototype, like very early, and I was super excited about that because that is one of the coolest digital filters. But the previous versions weren't completely real time, and now with it all being real time, I'm extremely excited for that.
Yeah, I got to talk shop with him, and that was you know, about the details of it under the hood as well. And I was just like, wow, this is just really neat. So I'm waiting for him to get what is it, assimilator done.
Yeah, the sampler.
We're gonna do a trade for a gate storm for an assimilator.
Oh
Because,
yeah,
you know,
nice.
both of them are eight channels, so I'm thinking this is gonna be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, that thing, that's got a lot of people excited. That's one area of Eurorack that this year I kind of had a good feeling that was going to explode, but sampling inside of Eurorack is really taking off now. And we saw that Make Noise just did the Morphogene, which is like an update of the Phonogene, which definitely looks cool. I had a Phonogene for a while, and basically I got rid of it for all the things that they fixed, you know, in the Morphogene, which is going to be really cool.
Yeah, I have a Phonogene, and I mean, I use it for more bit crush type sound. If you will,
yeah.
you
I
know.
really like the sound on sound mode in it, which is super fun. But I always found that balancing the level on it was kind of iffy for me, and I love slicing drums up on it. I loved using it as like a pseudo granular sampler where you could just chop up a drum loop and then, you know, send it into like granular small chops and then back out and do all kinds of cool stuff with that.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing that now with I bought the Bitbox from 1010 Music. I had a chance to talk with the guy that designed that. He's an ex-Ableton employee, I believe. And I know a lot of people are like, they're like, if I want to use a DAW, I would just hook up my computer kind of attitude towards it. But, you know, I use it because it sits in my case. If I create a patch that I like, I just record it down and just sample it down. And you can sample to clock. And so I'm a person that I definitely like samplers. So I definitely like to build up a library of things to play with. That thing is just absolutely beautiful for just sampling down real quick something you were working on. Maybe it doesn't work with what you're doing, but you want to save it. You don't even have to have a computer near you. You run one wire in, or two wires, so you have clock and record in, set the level, hit a button, hit it again to stop, and now you have a sample. You don't have to hook up anything else. You don't have to play with anything else. It's just really quick. And also he's released another set of firmware for it.
I was going to say, it looks like it's also something where he seems like the kind of person that's going to be tooling with that thing for a while, and, you know, tweaking and updating things and changing things pretty often.
Oh yeah. And like when I talked to him, because I was asking him for a couple features that I wanted, specifically for stuff that I was doing. And like his questions were good. His questions, he wasn't like, okay, that's nice. He was like, well, tell me more about that. Well, explain why you want to do that. Like, it was like, I was like, I couldn't believe the level of detail he wanted to ask me, because then he'd be like, well, why don't you do this and that? I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't think of that.
It's always nice when you talk to a developer of something and you've got a great idea for something and they're actually open to hear it, and then take it a step further and they're like, but did you consider this? And then you learn something from it, which, that's a whole lot more confidence inspiring than when you talk to somebody and you say, oh, I would really like, and they say, oh, well, I just never thought of that. And then they just leave it at that. And you're like,
well, I mean, the big difference too is that when we go to these different shows compared to some shows, it's not, some random person coming there just showing off, a piece of gear. You've got people that actually built these things there, who are the brains behind them, and you start talking to them. I mean, you can ask a person one question and they'll be quiet for like 3 minutes while they contemplate. You just changed their whole world with the question you just asked.
yeah,
that happened to me. Someone be like, well, what about this? And I'm like, wow, I never thought of that, but now you've got me going off on my creative brain path and like thinking about all these things. It's fantastic. And that's what this Eurorack community is really like. I mean, everyone is so close. The musicians and the designers are, can be one and the same, or they're friends with each other.
Yeah, and you get into situations where you've got like 4 designers in a room sharing a bottle of whiskey, and next thing you know, like, people are walking away like, oh, I got to design this, I got to do this, I got to do that. It's like all these, it's not this secretive community like some of the other companies I've dealt with.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the number of conversations that I have with probably, I don't know, 10 other designers. And, I'll ask them a question, they'll ask me a question. I mean, it's just, everyone helps each other out. I mean, like I said earlier, that the help that I got from Andrew Morelli as I was starting Erogenous Tones, and we are still working together on modules. I help him out with digital stuff and he helps me out with analog stuff. That wouldn't have happened in other industries. I don't feel, I don't think there would have been that camaraderie.
Yeah. I see, man, you got me on here looking at that Three Sisters module, because I forgot about it.
Oh, let me tell you, I've been wanting a comb filter for a long time. And,
well, I just got rid of, I had the Rainmaker, and I just got rid of it out of my setup, and I used the comb filtering on it probably more than anything. And I love comb filtered sounds.
Yeah, that's how you get like that really nice metallic stuff. Or, I mean, I had looked at what was the other one? The Grendel filter I had looked at, which looks great, right? I mean, but I think it's more focused on a lot more of the vowel sounds from what I've understood.
Yeah, that's like a vowel thing.
And I wanted something that was a little less focused on a specific sound generation. So that's what got me onto the Three Sisters.
Well, you were talking about
Mannequin, I think it's
when you were talking about VC8 and Levitate and everything, it really kind of makes me think a lot about FM, and not only FM but also phase modulation and whatnot. Do you do a lot of that in your setup?
I don't do a lot of I want to say phase modulation in the Eurorack world. I do that mostly in the box. And the reason being is I just don't feel that I've found a module yet that gives me the digital functionality that I can get with like FM8 or even Operator. Like
Mhm.
they're so easy to work with. And now that I see AAS is working with IntelliGel, I wonder if we'll see a 4 operator FM come out with a lot more of the functionality. But I think it's a love-hate relationship for probably a lot of engineers, because FM is a beautiful tool to work with, but it's not easy for people to wrap their heads around the digital mechanism for generating these complex tones.
Mhm.
I mean, I've met a lot of people that write music, and I've met very few people that delve into writing their own FM patches. Most
I
of them are
think
just
I
using
think
presets and
it,
tweaking
it
them.
has a lot to do with how you interface with those tones. So I like to create a lot of FM patches, and I'll do it more often than not. I'll do it on traditional synths as opposed to in the modular. But the thing that I find that kind of holds people back is that it's way easier to design FM sounds if you're going by ratios.
Right.
And if you're going by ratios and then have fine control past that, that's where you really can work pretty quickly.
And you have to have digital there. I mean, you're just
Yeah,
not going to get
exactly.
those ratios in analog unless you're using like a spinning wheel, like how
Yeah,
organs do it, right? Some organs
yeah.
do it.
I've been with the orgone accumulator, you can do some of that stuff, and with the with elements, I use elements in FM mode as well. You
Yeah,
know,
I have an elements up here, but I haven't gotten too deep into it yet.
Yeah, that stuff is pretty cool. I mean, that kind of simplifies things down a little bit, as opposed to just using individual oscillators and trying to just fine tune it. But that really goes back to that whole thing of like, man, your potentiometers better be nice. You know what I mean? If you're
Yeah. Well,
trying to do this,
see.
and
I
if you're
don't even
using
think.
analog, dude, don't even breathe on it.
Yeah. If I was, if I did an FM synth, I'd probably use encoders to set the
Yeah.
ratios. I mean, I started on some designs on FM Eurorack modules, and I'm just not ready to commit to them yet, because I feel like I have to add something that goes above and beyond, and I haven't hit that epiphany yet of what, like I play with Operator a lot and FM8 a lot, and I'm like, how would I envision that in the Eurorack world? And that it's tough. It's really
Yeah, there's
tough.
what's the other one? A Chemi's Castle.
Yeah. I haven't
Yeah,
played
that's
with that
pretty
yet, but
cool.
I did read the manual on it.
How
And
dare you?
well, I was curious how they were going to handle all the ratios and everything, but
Yeah.
I feel like it still doesn't really do the level of granularity of control that I would want.
Yeah, I think it's more like you get the individual pieces and then you can change a few algorithms and then you can mess with
Because
the
I use
weights. But
FM. I mean, in the analog world, I mean, I just used one operator, one modulator FM. Matter of
Mhm.
fact, I don't know if you ever play with FM Aid.
Yeah. Mhm.
That thing, that is an incredibly fun module to use. The way they design how you modulate the carrier and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm looking at radar and like that's kind of like the first thing that came to my mind is like, man, if you tie that in and just kind of use that to, cuz when you're doing FM stuff, if you have a lot of envelopes, it makes it so much better. I mean,
Right.
it just takes it from really cool sounds to like just out in outer space. And the especially if you're doing sounds that are going to be percussive, it can be really really useful to have like some cool envelopes and some looping envelopes in there.
Yeah,
Um,
what I tend to do is I normally have Levitate sitting right after Radar, because I use that just to bring the envelopes down to the level I want. Because there's a lot of modules, and Radar is the same way. You need to use an attenuator on the CV input on the shape, so you can set the level amount that you want to come in, because it basically adds it to the value of the shape knob wherever it's at. So you can use negative or positive on that. But I use that just so I can apply just a little bit or a lot, or even whatever I want to do with it. So I tend to use a lot. I mean, that's you know once people figure out that how important a utility module like Levitate is, it's amazing the emails that I get from people. It's like, just to tell you, like Chris Meyer, I gave him one for him suggesting all the changes that he gave to me because I was really happy about that. And he came up to me at KnobCon. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to buy another one of those from you." So he bought one from me as well because he uses it so much, and he said he didn't realize how much he was going to use it. But having the ability to have gain to 2x or attenuation down to 0, and it's an incredibly quiet module. I don't hear
I'm looking
any.
at the price, and it's really not expensive either.
I think it was like 179 is what I.
Yeah, I'm on Perfect Circuit right now, and it's 179, which is, considering you're getting 8 channels on there. Yeah, that's actually really.
Well, the funny part on that is I actually priced it a little lower than I should have because I didn't understand. I didn't understand all the complexities of working with retailers. But
yeah.
Now that I do, now I understand my ways. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, I've already announced the price. It's already out there, and it's what's done is done.
So it's a value, people. Look at it for what it is.
I'm telling you, it's funny how many people just don't. They get it and they start playing with it, and they're like, "Oh wow." Because just attenuators, like I don't think people realize there's a lot of modules. I mean, I've seen people, using the synthesis tech modules and not using attenuators with them, and you have to.
No, you need to. Yeah, you really need to.
There's no. You're just going to be going from max to min on those things, and once you have something like that, you're just like, oh wow, and having a couple invert switches so that you can, invert the signal, and you're just like, wow, this really opens up my creativity.
And really, I'm looking at the VC8, and it's only $319. And considering how many VCAs you get with that, and all the control plus the sub mixing, that's ridiculously low too.
I try to make this stuff.
I like that.
Affordable. Yeah. I mean, because I buy modules too. I know how it feels on the wallet when you're trying to select between a module and you're like, I could get this module, but that's a lot of money. So that's why I was explaining to people on Radar what features it has. And I don't have the price on that yet. I've got to get the final numbers from manufacturing before I can give that out. But it's going to be very aggressively priced, and that was the point, because I want people to get all these envelopes, to take up as little room as I possibly could with all the features that I add, and to have a price that they can really work with.
I'm trying to figure out which row I'm going to end up doing, because basically what I would do is like, this makes me think of like, okay, just do a utility row. You know what I mean? Just do a utility row and then have it all kind of come down and then back in, and then I'm good to go, Like
my setup right now, because I don't have the Mother 32 in this setup that I'm working on, so I don't have Mother's little helper there. But like I do GateStorm, VC8, and I'm probably going to switch these two, Radar and then Levitate. But the only reason I have GateStorm at the front where it was because I have that going down and driving a bunch of drum modules. I just got Entity from SSF, which is an absolute blast to play with. But
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, if you haven't seen Entity yet, it's a bass drum module, but you can do other stuff with it. Ooh. And it's really tunable. Like I really like the effort that Andrew put into like the controls.
No, is that analog or digital?
Yeah, it's analog.
Really? Yeah, I need to check that out. I haven't seen that one yet.
If you like a bass drum that you can really tune your sound on,
the one that I've been using lately has been Audio Damage Boom Shack, and that thing is amazing. That sucker is just, you can do so much with it, and if you modulate it right, you could take it all over the place. I
haven't had a chance to play with that one yet.
Oh, it's ridiculous, man. I'm looking at Entity right now. Yeah, but it's absolutely ridiculous. The control over that thing, and like I've got a few I guess you would just call them complex drum voices, because they can be kick, they can be snare, they can be toms, hi-hats, whatever. But like I've got the Mega Percussive Synthesizer.
Like the Mutant Machine as well from
I don't have that one. Yeah, I have the Mutant Snare, Mutant Bass Drum, Mutant Hot Glue, and something else. I don't have the Mutant Hats yet. I think I'm going to build one of those. I'm addicted to building too. I love building modules, like kits and whatnot.
So, I built the clay sequencer was the last one I built. That took forever.
Oh, the big green one?
Yep.
Oh man, I've been dying to do that. Did you do the one with the? Did you have the daughter board on it, or did you have to do all the?
No, it was the updated one with the daughter
Okay.
board.
How was the build?
It took a while. That's a lot
Yeah,
of parts.
yeah,
And
because
I
that's
actually just I sold it to someone on Facebook because I was like, I like it. It's a lot of fun, but it takes up so much room
yeah,
that
yeah.
I
It's a
actually
big one.
switched that out and I'm using I don't know if you've seen Maleko's new voltage block.
Oh yeah, it looks cool.
So yeah, I got one of those. I'm really good friends with Ben Davis, so
Yeah,
I could ask him all the questions I had on it. Well, I'm going to tell you that thing is fantastic. It's got 8 lanes of up to 16 steps of voltages, and I know some people complain that it's only 0 to 5 volts, but for musical stuff, that was fine for me. 5 octaves is okay, and for anything I need to be larger, I just feed it through Levitate, and
yeah.
then it's 0 to 10 volts at that point. You know, so
Exactly, exactly.
solve my problems with that. But it's just so much fun. I was looking for a sequencer just to do some quick stuff on, like that, and it has a random mode, which you can randomize the settings, which is really nice.
What are you using any kind of quantizers or anything?
Right now, quantizer wise, I have the Quantimator from Topo Brillo, or however you pronounce that. I've got
Hmm.
2 of those, and I've got 2 dope for quantizers. Now, Voltage Block will quantize internally. So I've been using that on it. And then now that I've been using the ES8 as well to generate stuff out of Live, because I use a push 2 to do things, and I'm basically I don't need a quantizer because it I use the calibration system in Silent Way to calibrate the voltage to frequency.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, that's
So I'm kind of all over the place, and the other weird thing is sometimes I just don't use a quantizer at all, and I just tune it by ear because
yeah.
sometimes
That's where I found myself recently. Now, and this is not to put anybody on blast in any way, shape, or form. So I don't want it to come off the way that it may come off. But I have the what's it called? Oh God, who makes the U scale?
IntelliGel, right?
IntelliGel. So I've got a U scale MK2 here, and I sent it away once to be fixed, and it came back. Well, really, it came back a U step two accidentally. So I bought the U step because I said, "Well, I'm not sending it back. It's cool. I'm keeping it." So so I bought that, and then I said, "Okay, send me the other one back now that it's fixed." And they sent me that back, and it came back, and it's still doing the exact same thing, which is kind of a weird thing because it's like so if I play it what should be on all my oscillators, a C3, it does not play a C3. It doesn't quantize to that.
Right.
But I've had 2 other U scales in here and they worked perfect. It's just the one that I have for some reason seems to be off.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I kind of I don't know. I tried to look into it myself and no luck. So I need to send it out again to see if they can finally get that thing right. But the
That's weird.
good
Does it just have a scaling offset problem, or?
well, that's kind of what I was thinking. And there are trimmers on the back, and I had looked into it. This was a while ago, and I could never get it right. It never did that. And when they sent it back to me, it just never worked right. Yet every friend that's come over, I'm always like, you mind if I borrow your U scale? And I put it in my case in the same slot and everything. So I make sure that there's no changes, and still, and theirs will work perfect, but mine just won't. So,
Huh. Well, it
which is,
must be some kind of something like that. It's probably like a resistor on the board that's out of tolerance and it can't get to the range.
yeah,
Yeah.
something strange is going on there. But I really like its functionality. So if it works, then I'll be really happy.
Yeah,
But
like anytime I'm doing some kind of like random voltage generation and I need to keep it within the scale, you got to have a
I
quantizer.
like to do a lot of things where I'll use a specific scale, and it's just easy to
Yeah.
snap it to a quantizer. But lately, like this also ties back into me getting rid of the Rainmaker a little bit, is that I found that sometimes complex isn't necessarily what I want, even though I think I want it. It's not. So 16 tap delay is fantastic. All the pitch shifting, the envelope per step, that thing is really, really cool. But I found myself using dirty, simple Synthertech EKO delay even more than it, you know,
Right.
because I just really enjoy hands-on. Like, and I've got the way huge Aquapus analog delay pedal that I modified for CV, stuff like that, like hands-on things that are they're not quantized, they're just kind of fun hands-on things. I end up using those. So the sequencer that I like using the most right now is the Synthertech Sequence 8, which is, you can't get much more basic than that. It's a super basic sequencer, but without it being quantized, it's just musical. Like, it's just very, like, you don't even have to quantize it. Like, you can just do it by ear, and I find it's very easy to get what I want out of it, you know?
Well, this is probably kind of nerdy, but like the reason I kind of go down this sometimes is I'm a big guitar fan as well, and one person I studied was Stevie Ray Vaughan, and he very often played notes out of the scale in the stuff that he did, and they fit perfectly. Yet they shouldn't, right? From a traditional teaching standpoint, they don't make sense to be there. And so when I started to think, what I find is, if you detune things just slightly, you know, in either direction, you can get these beat frequencies and stuff that pop out that you wouldn't have heard, right? It's kind of almost like, I think of it almost like when you're doing drums and you want to, you know, put a little swing into it. You make things early, things late to get that extra feel. Well, you know, if you want to think about that in the frequency domain, you get those same kind of those things. You get that tension that you just want. You don't want a whole bunch, right? You don't want to be that next note that's going to definitely sound off, but just enough that it's just detuned enough because you're playing a sound that might detune itself while it's playing, right? Maybe it has a pitch envelope. And now, you know, it's just those little nuances that you can really tune things in that I tend to a lot will just not even use a quantizer when it's going to be like a fixed pattern, not something that's going to change.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, and even if it's changing, like, for instance, and this, I don't know if you're using GateStorm in this way or not, but I've been using Trigger Riot. I initially got it because I wanted to do drums that were not so stagnant and drums that were not so expected. You know what I mean? I wanted to use it for the exact opposite reasons why I tend to use BeatStep Pro.
You couldn't get one of your kids just to play on some drum triggers?
Oh, I could. It's just a matter of
those will be
I want my modular to catch fire. Ollie is insane. But no, what I found myself using it for more than anything is I use it for weird accentuations and timing fluctuations of VCAs and whatnot. So what I'll do is, like, I'll send it rhythm, like I'll have the drums will be sequenced by something like BeatStep Pro, but then I'll send envelope triggers from Trigger Riot that'll just be bringing levels up and down a little bit and that sort of thing. So what I find myself using that for more than anything else is just these little, like, rhythms that are not necessarily actual drum hits or pitches or anything. It's just movement. You know what I mean? Like, just weird parameter movement throughout the patch.
Well, it's like you have a mutant bass drum, right? So if you take one of your gate, I do this all the time with GateStorm. If you take one of your other gates out and hit the pitch input, it floats up and down from that pitch. So you get like these doom, 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 doom.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that all the time. That is so much fun.
Yeah, that's how I have it patched up right now. Like, the patch is, like, it's all about, it's going into, like, envelopes, and those envelopes are changing, like, the strength of elements and that sort of thing, just so that I get, like, these strange movements.
I'll tell you another fun thing. You could do this with your Trigger Riot, which I do with GateStorm all the time. Take all your outputs and put them into a mixer, right? So I go all of them into Levitate. And so then you use the level control to set the range that you want that individual value to add. And then you can either use the value or use a quantizer afterwards. And now you've just made a sequencer.
Yeah. So there's a module that Jesse over at Animodule created called the Mixor, right? Which is a 4-input mixer, right? And then it's got attenuator outs for each one of those. And then you have inputs for mutes. You've got mute buttons, and then you can sequence it as well. So a lot of times I'll send everything into that, and then I'll sequence that and have that coming out. So then it's all chaos.
Yeah, it's crazy what you can like. I was playing around with the generating melodies with GateStorm with a Levitate, and I was like, this is just crazy. Like just the number of and that's before I even made VC8 and Radar. So I didn't even
you could do swing on GateStorm, right?
You cannot do swing.
Set it up to do swing, damn it.
Well, there's some stuff coming. This would be a good point to talk about the firmware update that's coming for GateStorm. So the way GateStorm works is it synchronizes to an incoming clock. So because of that, you have some limitations. Because I'm doing multiplications, I have to basically do things between the lines of the clocks coming in. So doing things early can be difficult, but I'm working on being able to allow doing things late at least. But some people have been asking about what the other firmware updates are going to be. So I don't want to say what everything is going to be because I'm still working on them, but I'm working on other multiplications and divisions to be added in there because I'm making some fundamental changes to the subsystem on the timing to support 24 PPQ. So
nice.
So I want to be able to turn off the internal clock and just increment it with a 24 PPQ signal, which I think would be really fantastic for a lot of people. The other thing I'm working on is some sequence chaining, if you will. So like a sequence finishes based on something, you switch to another one, switch to another one, switch to another one. That's being worked on. And I'm also working on ratcheting modes. And that is going to be a little different than other ratcheting, but people have really been asking for that ability, and that is definitely coming.
So the way that this thing works right now, it gives you a BPM readout, and it's calculating how many steps, like how many clock inputs before it calculates your BPM.
You can set that. So you can set it to listen to only 2 up to 16 coming in.
Oh, okay.
So you can pick so that way.
No, if it's listening to up to 16, is it averaging across that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Now there is a firmware update that I haven't pushed out yet that will allow you to also set the lower range so that like if you don't ever want to detect lower than 110, it won't, kind of thing. Because the problem is if you figure out what it goes down to 20 BPM. If you figure out what the time between beats on 20 BPM is, it's really long comparatively. So if you're starting and stopping your sequencer, it's going to change the what you're playing back. So I've already added it in, and I have someone testing it in Australia right now. But that'll be in there for people to control when they just want to use a slow clock. And that's the whole reason for this 24 PPQ stuff going in and faster clock bases. So if people want to use a faster clock so they're not hitting that problem all the time of very sparse beats triggering a BPM, they'll have that capability. So I'm just trying to make it more flexible.
So aside from the 2024 on there, can you set it up to take divisions like and use that as the main clock? Or?
Yeah, right now it has a built-in clock divider in the settings. So you tell it, basically if you tell it divide by 2, then every 2 clocks will equal 1 that come in.
Can you do multiplication?
You cannot do multiplication yet.
Okay, because that's one thing that I've kind of wished for, and I noticed that usually it's either one or the other, but not both.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean,
I know TikTok will let you do both, but I'm talking about again, I'm new to Trigger Right, so I don't know if it can, but it only does divide, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
I can do multiply, but
it's kind of already doing multiplication. So when you send in beats right now, those beats are because you can do up to multiply by 16.
Yep.
So I am actually calculating those values in between. But I see what I'll play with it and see how that works, if it's something that'll be useful in there in terms of how the code works.
Yeah, it depends on the patches that I'm setting up, but sometimes when I'm setting up a more elaborate patch, I'm like, man, like I'll get you ever set up an elaborate patch and then you get to a certain point and you're like, oh damn, I really wish I could just, instead of doing that, I could do this right now, it can kind of make things go a different route for you sometimes.
Right.
I have that happen a lot where I'll get an idea for a patch and that'll go on for about 2 or 3 hours. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, okay, well now my mentality has switched and now I want to do this,
That happens. I think that happens to a lot of people. It's like my funniest thing is when I was years ago starting out writing music, I'm like, I'm going to write a cover song. right? So I start writing a song, and it ends up being an original piece at the end because I didn't even didn't even get close to what that song. Someone be like, what song inspired you? I'm like, yeah, it was just an inspiration, you know.
Yeah. So the whole point of me getting my modular was basically like a sound design tool, and then it started off. Okay, well, I really wanted a 2-voice, and at the time there were no reissues of the 2-voice, and I loved the SEM filter, and I kept thinking to myself, well, how could I ever have one of those? And then sure enough, I found there was SEM clone modules, and I was just like, oh, that's awesome. So I started doing that kind of stuff, and then it kind of snowballs into, okay, well, now I want a drum machine that can do drums that are not normal. And
I don't know what you're talking about, snowball effect.
Exactly. So you start doing
clue.
these kinds of things, but that's the same way my patches tend to be. Is it's ADD heaven. It's like, okay, well, you come up with a what you think is a great idea, but as you travel down that path, the world shows you that there's a better idea. So,
yeah, you're like, that wasn't exactly what I was thinking.
but
Yeah,
this is amazing.
My being into modular synthesis comes down to seeing Alessandro Cortini and Richard Devine playing on the Make Noise shared system at Moogfest one year. I got to they Make Noise did a event at their space, and I got to go see them both perform. And hearing Alessandro Cortini get these just so organic sounds coming out of that system, I was literally blown away. I was like, this is the most amazing thing I have heard. And that started the journey. So I asked one of my friends who worked at Guitar Center, and he's like, yo, dude, you should talk to this guy named Ben Davis. He's local. He's into this stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Ben is a great guy, man.
I found Ben on Facebook, and I just sent him a message. I'm like, hey, you don't know me, but I'm really wanted to learn more about modular synthesis, because I've been in synthesizers for years, right? But mostly either in the box or, virtual analog, if you will, and romplers and everything. And sure enough, that's how it started.
Yeah, Ben is a great guy, and his watching him kind of progress through through all the different modules that he's working on now with Moleko, it's really great to see him kind of getting his just due on that,
Oh yeah. It's great to see this. I love those 3 new boxes that they came out with. I can't wait to play with them.
Oh God, that Manther and the what's the drum one, the Dr. D or whatever. Oh, yeah. It looks awesome. Looks so awesome. I can't wait for that. I'm dying to get a little bit of a run on that thing. So I know that they were non-working prototypes that were there, but I got nothing but faith in those guys for that stuff.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be pretty awesome.
So I'm hoping, I haven't talked to Ben to find out when they're going to have them running. I'm hoping they have something by Moogfest. That'd be nice.
Yeah, this I always like to show this case off because I just had it recently made by Ethereal Sun, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah,
I like that you've completely filled it already.
It's over full by about 4 or 5 rows of 84 HP. And then I got if you look over there, that's the back here is the that's the modular drum rig right there.
I see it.
So, and I will be having the video of the Siglent SDS 1202X oscilloscope that will be posted up Monday. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I use this. You convinced me to get a Siglent scope. So
that thing is very impressive. The screen on those things is great.
Yeah, it's very bright. I mean, the Rigel was also, they're just as good to me, both of them, but the screen is definitely brighter on the Siglent, and for me that made a difference.
Yeah,
because I normally have so much lights on where I'm using it, like my solder station, because you need all this light so you can read all these unbelievably tiny parts.
So, what are you primarily creating these modules with? Are they like what size components?
So most of them are 0805.
Okay.
For all the
so you can actually see them.
Yeah. Radar has a couple 0402 parts on them.
Mm-hmm.
In speaking with WMD, we talked about there were some areas I wanted to put some more filtering in, and they can handle those sizes with no problem, they told me. So I experimented with them first to make sure I was happy with the results, and yeah, they were good to go. Everything else is
Cool.
about 0805 sized.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be the way to go. I've been building some of those mutable instruments modules, and that's like I want to stab myself in the eye when I'm done.
Oh yeah, well I use a microscope when I'm doing the 0402 or whatever this is. 0401? No, I think it is 0402. And because I can't, like, they're smaller than a grain of rice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I have no choice but to do that. But
Yeah, when people ask me about the size of it, I'm like, well, sea salt, that's what it looks like.
no, I prefer 0805 to be honest with you. That's probably what I'm going to stay at on all the modules moving forward, and only use 0402 in cases where I really want to add another part, but I don't have the space. Because if you look at the back of any of my boards, they are really packed.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time getting a lot of stuff on very tiny space.
All right. Well, listen, we'll finish up the show here, and what I will say is that I'm definitely looking forward to checking out the modules. I think I'm going to end up putting a radar in my cart as soon as it becomes available, because that thing sounds kind of fantastic. What is it? So VC8 and Levitate are both available now, right?
Yep.
Okay, and hold on, I'm trying to go back to your site so I can show the good people.
And Mother's Little Helper.
And Mother's Little Helper is available now. So we'll go back here. If you go to erogenous-tones.com, you can check this stuff out, and they have their module list here. You also have some Max for Live patches as well. Do you still do that kind of stuff, or what?
I do. The first Max for Live patch I did was the Xeno Chord Explorer, which allows you to generate chord patterns based off just playing single notes. That was because, I'm a guitar player before a keyboard player, and I was tired of trying to figure out all these chords. So I was like, I'm going to make a chord generator. So that's free for anyone to use. And then I created another app for people that own a Linstrument. So I have one of those, and it just means that you can use it in a scale mode, like you can use the Ableton Push.
Yeah.
So it's the user mode, and it's pretty fun to work with that as well, because the Linstrument is fantastic.
It doesn't have scale modes built in?
No, not the way it's set up. All of the notes are always on, and the reason for that is because of the sliding mechanics.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, you always want the slide to be correct. So, talking to, I know I'm going to say his name wrong, but I think it's Gert Bervin, who does the firmware for that. I spent some time talking to him why they made that decision, and it completely makes sense. So that because it's really focused on expressionism.
Sure.
And then, yeah, that last thing, I wrote an app for people that bought a new Touch MacBook Pro. When you hit the escape key in the touch bar, it'll make a click sound in the speakers now if you use this little app I wrote.
So it's kind of like haptic feedback for it.
Yeah, for your ear.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm trying to get it to work.
Audio
to
feedback.
Actually click the haptic feedback generator under the touch bar at the bottom, but they don't. Your finger has to be touching it for that to work. And so I'm trying to see if they'll give me a way of doing that, but I'm not getting any response from anyone at Apple. So the other thing I'm doing, there'll be another version of that, the Escape Assistant coming out, where I've actually incorporated an audio unit to allow you to filter the click sound and to place it spatially between the left and right side.
Oh, cool.
So, and that's all free.
Nice. So definitely go check that out. Gatestorm looks amazing. Mother's Little Helper. We got Levitate, VC8, and then coming soon will be Radar. How soon did you say that might hit streets?
I'm thinking middle of March I should be shipping out to the distributors.
Yeah, that thing looks awesome.
So I've ordered everything's in the ordering process right now, and so they usually turn that stuff around pretty quickly.
Super cool. All right, well, listen, thanks for coming on the show, and stick around for a minute. I'm gonna set this up. Also, just quick plug. I do have a Eurorack case giveaway that's going to be happening in the next month. So sign up over at fluxwithit.com. All you got to do is sign up for the newsletter. Also, anybody who buys a product off of the shop.fluxwithit.com, it's just like sound packs and stuff. presets for synthesizers, that kind of thing. They automatically get entered into a chance to win the case. It's going to be a portable Eurorack case, 2 rows of 84 HP. So definitely check that out. And keep an eye out for all the NAMM content that I have coming too. Shout out to Winston of Balcones Whiskey, who is at NAMM for Fluxwithit.com right now. And come Monday, I'll have all the video and content that he shot while he was out there, and I'll be putting that stuff up so that people can get some good info. I made sure to have him get some direct audio and kind of annoy some people in the way that I probably would if I was there. So that should be cool. But we will keep our eyes peeled for Radar when it drops, because I want one. It looks awesome, and everybody else should want one too. So peace.
Thanks.